Hello, folks. Welcome to Lantern Stream. Hope you're having a good evening today, or a good night. It is nighttime, isn't it? Yeah, doing well here. It's just been some unanticipated things occurred today, so I did not get to do much labbing. I didn't get to do much labbing, but I got to do a lot of networking because I had to work today, and I had a change window that there were some unexpected things that happened. That was a great learning lesson. And I'm going to share kind of a scenario tonight on stream. I thought I'd take a minute just to provide an update about where I'm at. And hey, Frosthammer, it's been a while. Hope you're doing well, bud. And I'm going to try to speak in a low voice because it is late. And yeah, it has been a minute, months, many months. Well, at least months since we've seen each other in person. But hope you're doing well. But hope all is doing good. Yeah, I want to show you all a scenario today here in a minute that I encountered, and just want to see how you would troubleshoot it or approach it. I had a great time working on it, and it was fun. But yes, on my study plan, the written notes review. It's 10 days since I passed the written exam. And I think I did my due diligence on following up and studying the questions that, I was uncertain of or that I missed. And, I created some flashcards for that material because some of it is related, of course, to the lab itself, the practical exam, and just to maintain my knowledge, right? So, as I said, my goal was to have that all done by this weekend, and I'm finished. Yay. Now I can move on to the labbing. So, we're going to get back to the labbing. Big Abe, yes, man, I've got to get that number. We're going to get it. We are going to get it, bud. So, yeah, back to the labbing, and that will be multicast. And I'm not sure of my schedule yet tomorrow because there is a family thing I'm going to in the afternoon. So it'd either be in the morning that I'll start labbing, or later in the evening that I'll do some labbing. But we're going to do some labbing and multicast, PIM multicast starting tomorrow. So yes, I'm so glad. And flashcards, I did do some flashcard study this morning. So that was good. I try to go through, again, I have two decks. One is Necrocube's deck, and the other is my own. And mine is now, how many cards do I have in here? 1,001 cards. So just from studying the written notes, I've added probably 150 cards just from that. So anyway, good stuff. That's what I'll be working on. I don't have a whole lot to share. Again, I had a change. It's funny. I want to tell you just a little bit of the story behind it. It involves some BGP, and what happened was the change was going fine. We had a 2-hour change window, and I was working with someone else who works with is sort of the firewall, is one of the firewall experts, subject matter experts. And our task was, well, I'll go into that in a minute. Anyway, we were 2 hours in, and 2 hours was our estimate of time to complete, and everything seemed to be working great. We had to do some new BGP adjacencies and things like that, and we were testing the traffic. We're doing our verification plans, and we found one little problem, it seemed, or the firewall, and guy found a problem. He's like, I'm seeing a lot of I'm seeing some traffic from this particular range, and it's hitting the firewall, and no traffic is coming back. So all the other testing we had done, the application traffic testing that had been done, seemed to be fine. And we thought we were just about done at the end of our change window. And then we found this problem. So I'm going to present this problem to you and just see if you have an idea. I mean, I know it's not easy to sort of, you don't have all the information. You haven't been working on this 2 hours like I was at the time. And actually this week I've been working on the change script and verification. I even did some labbing. I used Azure to lab up a portion of the network and test the change script out prior to the change today, because you're making a change on a Saturday. You don't want to be around all day troubleshooting something. And for all practical purposes, the change went great. We found this one problem though, and here's a scenario I'm going to pose to you, and feel free to take a stab at it. A lot of lessons learned here for me though, a number of lessons learned. All right, so what we got is we got two BGP ASs here. We've got BGP, let's just call it 20,000. We've got BGP 10,000. And prior to the change, what we have is these networks like 192.168.100, and this BGP area is paired with this. This is an important router on the network. It's paired directly, eBGP, and it's just changing routes. And this device can talk to this device, right? Well, the change was to we're going to move some networks around, and we're actually going to put some of them behind a firewall. So this goes away. And then this is a new connection, right? So this link is still here. Let me, this is a very important detail. So this link is still here, right? Because, you want, just in case of rollback. So what's a good thing to do? What you could do is you could just shut down the BGP peering, right? So you can say, we're going to say over here, router BGP 2123, and we'll just say this neighbor 1.1.1.1, whatever, remote, we'll just say, it depends on your version of code. Like if you're running iOS XR, if you're on a firewall, if you're on Nexus, for example, your wording would be different. But let's say you just shut down the neighbor, right? So by shutting down the neighbor, we're able to, ensure that paths are now going through the firewall. Our traffic is going through the firewall, just like we want. And this adjacency is shut down. Okay. Got any problems? We just come back, we roll back, we say, no shutdown on the neighbor. And we're good. We're back up. We roll back. But let's just say that we shut down this adjacency. Now traffic is going this way, right? Because this is paired with the firewall. The firewall is running BGP. And what we're doing is for all practical purposes, this is internal traffic, right? These are private IPs. This is internal traffic. But we're going to be doing some transitions later. So right now, firewall is doing BGP, and it is it's allowing all traffic between these networks. So in effect, there's no access list here. There's no restrictions. Yes, it is going through a firewall that is for something that's coming down the road, but no restrictions here. But here's the interesting part. I can go to this server 10.10.10.10, and I can go to the command line, for example. And I can say ping 192.168.100.10. Traffic works, golden, right? So pings are going this way, and all is right in the world, right? I'm going to change the color of that. Make it gray or something for right now. So this is working, right? Everything's good. Like, all right, fine. And if we do a trace route, this we can confirm that it is taking this green path here to get to this host. Great, excellent. All our route tables have converged. There's no filtering, and traffic is going this way now, and it's not trying to go this way. This peering is shut down. But my comrade in arms here notices that he is seeing SYN. He's looking at the firewall logs just to see kind of what's going on. And he's seeing a lot of TCP SYN packets trying to go from multiple hosts, including our host down here, 10.10.10.10. But we're not seeing. So this guy is trying to make, this is ICMP. He's trying to make TCP connections this way. And my comrade, he sees he actually can see the traffic coming in and going out. I'm like, well, there's no filtering going on here on this router. Granted, there's some traffic, like this is not, there's actually another router here, and I won't go into all this, but for all practical purposes of this little scenario, let's say this guy is directly connected to the router, right? So I'm thinking, all right, this is really strange. So how would you troubleshoot this? Think in your mind of how you might go about, where would you start? Basically what we can conclude, and even in looking at the firewall logs, is that basically ICMP works, UDP traffic works. Packet capture on the far end to see if there's a reply. Well, that's what I did, as a matter of fact. Well, one thing we know. That's good, Frosthammer. So ICMP works, UDP works. So if we're sending a TCP SYN, we should get a SYN ACK, right? Coming on the return. Well, what we can see is, as I already mentioned, the firewall guy's like, hey, I don't see any return traffic hitting this interface. I'm like, well, do you see the ICMP? Yes, ICMP is going in. Actually, no, he did not indicate that. All he checked was TCP. I checked ICMP, and that worked. The pings came back, no problem. Trace route, MTU, MSS issues. Well, that could be something, Frosthammer, because potentially. But either way, I like your approach. One is go into the basics. Let's see where the traffic is going, right? So here's what I did. I came up to this router here, and I used good old EPC, Embedded Packet Capture. And I will say one thing. I've been working on this for the written exam a good bit, and I had kind of gotten the commands down. I started using commands here, and it wasn't working. I realized, oh yeah, that's right, because this is an iOS XE router, and the XE is so much easier to do embedded packet captures on. So let me tell you what I found first. is, so I did embedded packet captures on this side. I said, okay, show me all the traffic that the source host is 10.10.10.10. Destined for 192.168.100.10. Okay, and I see it. I'm like, okay, I've got the traffic is hitting this router. So I see ICMP and I even saw TCP. So I'm like, okay, the firewall's not blocking it. It's hitting this router. We're good. What is going on here? Because I immediately wanted to blame the firewall, right? Are you sure you're not blocking TCP? No, I'm sure. All right, so packet capture is a good way to go. And especially on iOS XE, it's so easy to run embedded packet capture and see exactly what's happening. So I did this inbound, this interface. Look at the fib to see if there's an asynchronous path. Okay, we're on the right course here. We're on the right course. All right, so then everything looked good here. So I'm like, okay, let me see the traffic coming back. So then on the same interface, I did a second packet capture. And this time I said, okay, show me all the traffic from source host 192.168.100.10 on this interface. And here's what I saw. I saw traffic coming this way, but not, I didn't see any traffic going from here to here to 10.10.10.10. I got no capture, no hits. Like, okay, what the heck is going on here? So then I captured on the upstream interface. I went here, right? I said, okay, show me traffic going from this source to the destination host 10.10.10.10. And it's there. All right. So the traffic is coming in into the router. Ingress is coming this way. And then it's hitting this host. This host is replying, and the return traffic is hitting this router, but it is not going out of this interface. So I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So what I did, the next step is I did on this router, I said show IP route 10.10.10.0. And here was the result. This is when I realized the mistake. The router said, it said 10.10.10.0 -24. It said the 10.10.10.0/24, and the metric was 90 slash something like that. So what is going on here? And guess what? The next hop, or the interface, is this interface. So what has happened here? I don't have the labeling here, but well, yeah, it's EIGRP. And what happened here is I did not realize that, and I'm not even sure. Well, I found out later. I thought about it. I figured out why, that I can only assume, but I don't think it was ever really intended that EIGRP would run here, but EIGRP was running here. And that was the problem. Even though these are different ASs, yeah, so this had I think this must have had a more specific prefix. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because one thing we were doing with this firewall is we're limiting the number of routes advertised in this direction. So there was a route to get here, but I think this was a more specific route. But so the return traffic had a path. As a matter of fact, ICMP works, and I even saw some UDP traffic that worked, right? Why was it just TCP though in this scenario? Because TCP is supposed to be resilient, right? Like I knew right away, but I'm just throwing this out there in case. Because remember what I did before here is I just shut down the BGP peering. So BGP routes were not being advertised, but EIGRP was still running. And I think what had happened before is at some point, someone had set up BGP between these neighbors using loopbacks and in the same AS. So at one point, this was all the same AS. And so we had iBGP, and so you had to have also an IGP running, right? In iBGP, if the routes were not learned by, or in iBGP, if the routes are not learned by an IGP like EIGRP, then the routes are not going to be advertised anywhere else. You are correct, Frosthammer. Good job. You are correct. So yeah, in most scenarios, let's say we take this, we change this to a Cisco iOS router. The traffic, it would have worked. The problem here, though, is that we're doing basically like TCP is maintaining state here. So what's going to happen is the firewall, even though it's not blocking traffic, it has to know about TCP sessions, right? So if it's only seeing one end of the connection, then it's not going to work, right? The return traffic needs to come through here, and only then will the firewall, the firewall has to know about the connection, and it has to know about the, because basically what's going to happen, right? I think this will try to also make a TCP connection, because generally TCP is bidirectional, right? So I think what was happening is, like, this direction would probably work, but the other direction, it would try to send here, and this device would send ACK back. The firewall would get this send ACK, and it would say, what connection are you talking about? So in either case, whether this one initiates and this one, let me put this, let me do an arrow here. That's the best way to do it. What is happening with this line? That is so weird. As you RPF configured on the router, that might have also killed it. True, and no, it is not. Bill, there we go. I don't know what these little dots are. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so here's the thing, right? With TCP between two hosts, and come to think of it, I'm not sure which direction. Okay, it was being initiated from here. Is being initiated from here. But this was actually two-way communication. To be honest, I think it might have been Kerberos. But there's like synchronization two-way going on here, and it authenticates. So again, the thing is, if traffic is going this way, you've got asymmetric routing, right? Which is not always, it's not always a showstopper. Sometimes it's just suboptimal, but when you've got a firewall in the mix, that's when you're going to have problems, right? Because again, if he sends traffic, if he builds a connection back this way, which happens often, right? You typically got a two-way. He's going to send a SYN this way, and the SYN ACK is going to hit the firewall, and the firewall is going to say, I don't know who you're talking about. Drops the packet. That was the problem. So once we came here and we said, no router, EIGRP 100, boom, everything started working. Frosthammer says some designs call for it for traffic utilization. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons to do that, right? Also, if you've got multicast traffic, which we weren't concerned about in this particular case, you know, that would be important. And then if you're doing security, right? If you're doing URPF for security, like source guard, right? IP source guard, that would be important as well. So, among other things. So yeah, that was it. And again, I think what happened is, looking back on what could be different, one is I think a long time ago, this had been established as an, iBGP. So at some point, I think this was initially set up iBGP, and I think I remember talking to someone why this was changed. But in iBGP, of course, and with the full mesh, these are not all the right, links. But you also need an IGP running to get around to ensure loop-free topology, right? So that was done, and EIGRP was stood up. But later, this was shifted. As you can see, this network over here is going through several sort of different stages of transition. But this was changed to be eBGP. And at that point, you really didn't need EIGRP here, but it was left in place. So the thing would have been to remove EIGRP. And I was just doing that a little while ago. I was going back and cleaning up. I actually went, instead of what I did initially is router EIGRP 100, and I did shutdown. That was the quickest way to just, I like doing this. Obviously this caused a problem, but it actually helped us find one to avoid potential problem later. But I like just shutting down the process or the neighbor. And it's much easier to roll back that way, right? So I just shut this down, and then just a little while ago, this is why I'm streaming so late, is I went back and did some cleanup. I went ahead and just took EIGRP out of here altogether, because now this is an external AS for all practical purposes, even though we're using, you know, RC 1918 numbers. And there will be other changes to come on this network. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with me and playing with this. It was good for me to sort of do a little retro analysis of it. But I tell you, a couple things I learned. One is anytime you're going to make any routing changes on a router, if you don't know, and I haven't worked on this, actually someone else set this up. So I was not as familiar with the history or the setup. If you've never worked on a router, don't forget to run show IP protocols before you draft your change script, because you never know what might be running on there. You may think there's no reason for EIGRP to be running here. Doesn't mean it isn't, right? As a matter of fact, this interface is actually now like shut down. There is no interface here. Rip V1 in, Rip V2 out. You never know, Frosthammer. So before you change, just be sure you have done your assessment in the running state of the network and which protocols are actually running there. And I may have seen it before early on and just didn't take good note of it or whatever. But the other thing I learned is that, man, embedded packet capture on iOS XE, so much easier, and is a great tool. Is such a great tool to help troubleshoot problems quickly. Thanks for hanging out, folks. Again, tomorrow or today, as I have time, we'll get started on labbing. We'll do some multicast stuff. Thanks for hanging out, folks. We shall see you in a little while here in the Land Tamer stream. Thanks for hanging out. Y'all have a great rest of your weekend.